This open meeting of the Triton Regional School Committee is being conducted remotely, consistent with the Governor Baker's executive order of March 12th, 2020, and the provisions therein is extended by an act relative to extending certain state of emergency accommodations, which was signed into law on July 16th, 2022. These provisions suspended the requirement of the open meeting law to have all meetings in a publicly accessible physical location. Further, all members of public bodies are allowed and encouraged to participate remotely. I hereby call to order this meeting of the Triton Regional School Committee on January 7th, 2023 at 6 p.m. I am Linda Lukovsky, the chair of the school committee, and I would like to confirm that all members and persons anticipated on the agenda are present and can hear me. Members, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Erin?
I'm here and I can hear you.
Susanna?
I'm here and I can hear you.
Paul Goldner?
I'm here and I can hear you.
Caitlin?
I'm here and I can hear you.
Matthew?
I'm here and I can hear you.
Paulise?
I'm here and I can hear you.
Paul Mayette?
I'm here and I can hear you.
Narissa?
I'm here and I can hear you.
Staff, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Superintendent Brian Forget.
Here and I can hear you.
Director of Finance and Operations, Kyle Warren.
I'm here and I can hear you.
Director of Curriculum, Instruction and Assessment, Anna Bates.
I'm here and I can hear you.
Director of Student Services, Shannon Nolan.
I'm here and I can hear you.
Newberry Elementary Principal, Beth Yondo.
I'm here and I can hear you.
Pine Grove Principal, Nicola Perrier.
I'm here and I can hear you.
Reading Specialist, Shauna McGee.
I'm here and I can hear you.
Salisbury Elementary Principal, Catherine Daw.
I'm here and I can hear you.
For this meeting, the Triton School Committee is convening remotely via Zoom, using the information posted on the district's website, identifying how the public may join. If you are personally attending by video conference using your device's camera, please be aware that others may be able to see you. Committee members and administrators, please remember to mute your phone or computer when you are not speaking. All the district's website, all supporting materials that have been provided to members of this body are available on the district's website with the agenda posting, unless otherwise noted. The public is encouraged to follow along using the posted agenda. Each vote taken in this meeting will be conducted by a roll call vote. Please note that this meeting is being recorded and that anything that you broadcast may be captured by the recording. I will read our vision statement. We are a community of learners known for our unwavering commitment to meeting the needs of all students. Through the adoption of best practices and other active partnerships with families in the wider community who are united in supporting the development of engaged, successful, responsible, resilient learners. Students will be well prepared to be ethical, empathetic, and contributing citizens. Oral communications from the public. The next item on the agenda is the public meeting. Members of the public, the meeting host muted you as you entered the meeting. If you would like to address the committee, please indicate now that you would like to do so by raising your hand on the video call using the raise hand option on the participant screen. The meeting host will unmute you so that you can address the committee. Please refer to the public comment policy language on the agenda when making your comments, and remember that to speak clearly in a way that helps generate accurate minutes. When you have finished speaking, the meeting host will mute you again. The public comment policy language on the agenda states members of the public may address the committee for up to 3 minutes, longer with the permission of the chairperson. The committee will not engage in a discussion on topics raised during public comment, but may choose to add the topic on a future agenda. This agenda segment will be limited to 15 minutes. Would anyone like to address the committee? Seeing none. Next is the presentation of the FY24 budget proposals, and I'm going to hand it to Brian.
Thank you, Linda. Just for those who are in attendance and don't have the materials in the chat, I did just hit the link or just drop the link to the board docs website, and you can find all the materials that the principals will be speaking to tonight in their proposals on that site. So I just want to start with a brief setting of the scene. You're about to spend 3 nights hearing presentations directly from the 5 building principals and the 5 district administrators. Again, this process is something we put into place 17, 18 years ago, rather than what you would typically find where a superintendent comes in and proposes a budget and we discuss it. We believe that you should hear directly from the principals who can speak on behalf of their school councils and their school improvement plans, so that they can articulate what it is that they see as priorities for their buildings, as well as from each of our administrators at the district level to hear about their respective areas as they can speak with expertise to the needs happening in their particular domain. So I just wanted to take a moment and set the scene. We are still here on Zoom, but we chose to do this more out of efficiency and effectiveness in reaching a larger audience, as we did because of the pandemic and COVID. But we are continuing to emerge from a pandemic. So as we do so, this budget cycle is getting back into unfortunately, a more normal routine that we experienced prior. So as we continue to emerge from the pandemic, we continue to see increased student needs across the board, particularly socially and emotionally, as we figure out how to re-engage students academically as far as high expectations, and we come off of that, those 2 years of disruptions. We're experiencing extraordinary historic levels of inflation. That is, again, not unique to Triton or unique to Massachusetts and schools, but we are experiencing that as a country. We are seeing the end or the expiration and or the full commitment of all of our ESSER and COVID grant funds that have allowed us to provide extra programming and extra services to students over the last 2.5 years. We're currently negotiating our 2 largest bargaining units, the TRTA Unit A teachers and B instructional assistants. And we're having a year, as you'll hear throughout the next 3 nights, where we're seeing some extraordinary expenses come forward. We've had additional funds over previous years because of COVID, I should say. And we've also had a few years of, I would say, extraordinarily low increases in some areas based on myriad factors that we won't get into at this point. So I wanted to kind of set that scene as a kind of a sense of reality. Certainly you need to hear directly from everyone what the needs are, but I also wanted to do a quick history. I actually was handed the school handbook from Newbury Elementary School. Beth, I'll share it with you. The Newbury Elementary handbook from 2001, which was my first year as an assistant principal. And it also happens to be Kayla Ricker, who is Anna Bates' assistant. She was a student at the time at Newbury Elementary. So it was on my desk this morning, and I had to take the opportunity to just use this to set the scene on the changes that we've experienced in the district. So if we take all that to say, the pandemic wasn't the beginning of change as we've experienced it in the district. So if we look in 2001, NES had 625 students in 31 classrooms, K through 6. 4 or 5 sections per grade level. Kindergarten and first grade were the smallest at 71 and 76 per grade. Those are some of our today, those are probably the largest classes we would see across the district. Grades 3 through 6 ranged from 92 to 109 per grade level. There were grades that had 5 sections per grade. If you compare that to today, NES has an enrollment of 357 in 20 classrooms, K through 6. So we've seen a 50% reduction in the size and scope of the school over the course of 21 years. So that indicates, if you look at those numbers, 71 in kindergarten, up to 109, the largest grade level was in grade 4. That was where we started to see the decreasing enrollment. So this is replicated across all the elementary schools across the district. Again, late 90s, there were 3,600 students in the district. There are 2,200 now. So we're not going to rehash the patterns, but what we've essentially done is we have traded, and we've had this discussion with our towns, we've traded classroom teachers for increased interventions, supports, special educators, reading, math, SEL, STEM, interventionists to provide new interventions and supports that are needed in the school. So I wanted to take this opportunity as well. I'm going to share my screen because we need to also say thank you to the towns. Can you see my screen? Yes. So this chart shouldn't look completely unfamiliar to many of you. Over the course of this same 2002 to 2023, the same 22-year period, as I talked about the change at Newbury, indicative of the change across the district as a whole. We've talked about this, and we just need to remember this, that the state's failure to continue funding education within the district where it needs to be has been borne on the backs of our member towns, and our towns have stepped up. Looking at this chart simply, the red bar, the shortest bar, is Chapter 70 state aid. We'll call it relatively flat over 22 years. We actually just this year got back to where we were in FY02, 21 years ago. The blue is our total operating expenditure. We talked about inflation, normal cost of doing business that's increased over the years. The green is the increase to our members, our local towns, Newbury, Raleigh, and Salisbury's assessment. And you can see pretty much the majority, if not all, of the increase in each, the total spending in each year has been borne on the backs of our member towns. The orange line is the most disturbing figure in that it shows the percentage of Chapter 70 as a percentage of our total operating expenditures. So where it was in the close to 34% of our Chapter 70 represented, again, Chapter 70 is the state's money. The state paid for 34% of the total spend and total operating costs. They're now providing about 18% of our total operating expenditures. So that I didn't want to miss the opportunity to start with a thank you to our member towns. We haven't had a discussion like this in a few years because budgets have been just more of an anomaly given the experience that we've had with COVID. So wanted to set some scene, say thank you to the towns for the support. And you're going to hear about some challenges over the next few nights. So as we start this process over the next 2 months to arrive at a budget by March 15th that meets the needs of all of our students, I wanted to make sure we set that scene. So unless there are any questions for me, I'm going to hand this off to Beth and let her start to talk about Newbury Elementary School.
Thank you, Brian. It kind of makes me look bad that the enrollment's so low.
Not talking, that wasn't about
I'm just
you,
joking.
right?
I'm just joking. Okay, so I'm going to get started. I'm going to start on page 1. I'll walk you through each page so you know where I am in the presentation. So the NES School Council would like to request the following 3 positions. The first position that we're requesting is a 0.5 occupational therapist assistant. And a lot of this is due to the district programs. You can see below that we have 24 students in the district program. I made a mistake at the top here. It should be 19 instead of 17. The district programs this year, especially the TLC program, there have been students coming in unexpected, and we've had a few who've gone to out of district placement. So that's been, the numbers have been kind of moving throughout the year. So I apologize for that. So we currently have 24 students in the district program. All of those students see our occupational therapist. And then we have an additional 13 students that the occupational therapist sees at NES who are not in the programs, in the general education classrooms. And we're finding over the years that caseload is really hard for the occupational therapist to handle. I mean, we have students that we want to offer multi-tier systems of support interventions. A lot of what she does is supporting kids in the classroom, even starting in kindergarten with fine motor and handwriting centers, choice times for preschool students and K students. She's in the classroom a lot, working with the students and the teachers in those early grades, because we want to make sure that they have, the proper techniques. But with that being said, the program students consume a lot of her time, and we're finding it hard to get to the general ed students. So just having that extra hand would help her. It's not another occupational therapist. It's someone will be trained as an assistant and then work closely with our occupational therapist. And they'll also be used to collect data and help prep her for the treatments and do a lot of the small group instruction that she does. Like I said, the need for that is due to the number of students in the program. And I think we often forget that most of the students in the two programs at NES, the majority of them see the physical therapists, they see the speech and language pathologists and the occupational therapists. And then we have all our other students in the school as well. So we're really finding that to give the best therapies to students, that is something that we're needed at this time. Okay, moving on. I also want to talk about, so you're wondering, what does that look like? The occupational therapist, she can see some students up to 3 times a week for 30 minutes. And those are a lot of the students in the program. So the therapies can run anywhere from 1 time 30 for one student up to 3 times 30. So it's time consuming for her to cover all the students. All right, on to page 2. We also hope to increase our social worker, who is 0.5 this year, and that's been phenomenal having that extra person here. But we're at the point now where her caseload is pretty much full, and my guidance counselor's caseload is full, and you can see the number of students that they see. The guidance counselor right now sees 41 students K-6. And the 0.5 social worker sees 15 students. And those meetings can be anywhere from 1 times 60, 1 times 40, 1 times 30. And then we have some that might just be seen for like 50 minutes as a check-in. And a lot of their work is lunch groups as well, lunch bunches, helping kids with social situations. And the social worker has been phenomenal this year, connecting with parents, helping them have access to resources. And as you know, we just have some students that really have not transitioned back in easily from the pandemic. They have more anxiety, and we're finding that we go to IST and students are coming up. IST is our instructional support team, where kids are brought in front of members of NES and we talk about ways to support them, interventions. And we are constantly having kids coming up with anxiety, and it's impacting their learning. And if their social emotional needs are not taken care of, they're not really going to be learning academically. And I know for a fact, we just added a couple kids. My social worker maybe has 1 or 2 spots left to see students, and we're in January. And throughout the year, we're picking up students. So I want to thank you for making that 0.5 social worker this year. It's been very useful, but I do feel we have the need where we need it full time now. Okay, moving on to our STEM teacher. I also want to thank you for giving us a 0.3 STEM teacher, because it's kind of ignited something in the building with the teachers. I wasn't quite sure, to be honest with you, how this was going to play out and if it was going to work. But the collaboration with the teachers when the STEM teachers in the building is phenomenal. And I think we have a big enough need here, because we want to support our mathematics and our science, for this person to be full-time. And I would like to incorporate that into a special, one of their specials that they have on Fridays or whenever through the week. And also, there's also opportunity when we do that for teachers to co-teach. There's nothing to be said for teachers working together. And I've had 1st grade teachers right up through the 6th grade teachers come to me and say, working with her is great. She thinks outside of the box sometimes. She's bringing a whole nother element. She's been supporting teachers and students with mathematics and science. And having her a 0.3, as much as we appreciate that, I think it hasn't been, it hasn't effectively impacted the students the way we would hope. I really feel that we have a need for that to be full-time, especially with our mathematics scores. And it's just the connection that she can make. with the teachers when they co-teach or when she has students alone, the connection between math and science and real life experiences. It's engaging. The kids like going up to the STEM room. And I have to say, with the makerspace, having her only here a couple weeks and then gone for 4, we're not utilizing that room as much as we have in the past. In the past, I would be up there 3 days a week. I haven't been able to really support that this year with some staffing issues in my building. But that's something that if she was here on a regular basis, we could open that up 5 days a week or at least 4 days a week. The other thing that having her there that would really help, we have equipment up there since it's 3D printers, and we haven't been utilizing those this year as much as we could due to staffing. And to really, for students to create something on for a 3D printer, they need the time to create it on the computer and then make it in the makerspace room or in a STEM class. And that is time consuming. And it's something that I really would like the students here to have more of an opportunity to use. Also, the instruction with coding and online programs in robotics. We just had Spot the dog here that is all run by coding, and the students were so excited about that. So I think there's so many more opportunities if we had that as one of our specials during the week. And then there's also opportunities for her to co-teach where the teachers are learning from her as well. And it's a form of PD during the day. And as I said, the makerspace room. So that is that. And on page 3, you'll see I had the STEM teacher just write up some of her ideas and how it does impact the students. And I know when she presented to school committee, she did a great job sharing how that is used. But it's really important for the science practices and mathematical practices. She incorporates that all in. And I really think that what the students are getting is something that they deserve to have right now with the way technology is in the school. So my hope is that that position could be funded full time as a special, and for her to be able to co-teach with students and also provide some academic enrichment for some students. I think we do a good job with interventions, but I'm always looking for creative ways to make sure those students who are on the high end get what they need. And there's so many powerful things within math and science that can happen in that room if it's a special and if makerspace is open more and the co-teaching. Okay, moving on to a request for some more instructional assistance to support the Triton Learning Center. You can see in 2021 to 2022, we had 15 students in the TLC program. We're currently at 19 with 2 more on their way. So students are being evaluated and they qualify for the program. And what happened over the summer was we had some students move in that we weren't anticipating. So our numbers in that program have increased. We now have 3 classrooms. Last year we had 2. And then the ELPS program is the adaptive learning program for students. And I was going into this school year thinking we were going to have 3, and we had 2 more join us. So we're at 5 in that program. Our hope is to eventually reduce some of those instructional assistants. We have a new BCBA, and she's been spending this year training the instructional assistants who work primarily in the TLC program. Oftentimes, I feel like we're hiring instructional assistants who don't have the background, and we need to really get a comprehensive plan for training them so we can reduce some of these IAs and they have more of a skill set to work with multiple kids. But it all depends on the needs of the students. And of course, safety comes first, and we want to make sure all those students are safe. But I do think that putting in more of a comprehensive training is going to help us eventually reduce the number of IAs, because every time a student comes in, if they have a one-on-one in their IEP, I think we need to look more at offering high level of support for those students. But that's not going to happen unless we train those IAs and they have the skills to do that. Because oftentimes the instructional assistants are working with some of our most difficult students and they don't have the skill set. So I've been working closely with Shannon Nolan and really looking at how are we going to do that, provide the training so we can reduce the number of instructional assistants. And We want to make sure that those students are in the least restrictive environment, and we want to make sure that they become independent and they can be on their own at certain times during the day. And that's all a plan that Shannon and I have been looking at and working on. Okay, page 4. You can see the number of classrooms is staying the same. The one thing that I want to point out is in grade 5 this year, we have 3 sections. Next year, my plan is to reduce them to 2, and it would be 21 and 22 students. It was really important for me this year to keep them in 3 sections, and we have seen some maturity, and I think that they're going to be okay going into 2 next year. And it's certainly a reasonable number in 6th grade to be 21 and 22. Okay, moving on to page 5. I'm going to just kind of go down quickly the requested staffing levels. Regular ed professionals, I'm looking for a 0.7 increase, and that would be for the STEM teacher. Special education non-professionals, that is the 2 IAs in the TLC program and the 0.5 OT assistant. And then if you look at the slight increase in the guidance professionals, that would be adding an additional 0.5 social worker to make that position full-time. Moving on to page 6. Again, I've spoken to these positions. I just wanted to repeat in my budget why I'm requesting those. That's the 0.5 occupational therapist assistant, the social worker from 0.5 to full-time. Moving on to page 7, and the STEM teacher from 0.3 to full-time. And then of course, the 2 instructional assistants to support students in the TLC program. So the change in staffing is 3.7, and the total salary change would be $239,401. Okay, moving on to page 8. I'm just going to highlight some changes in line items here for regular education supplies. There's a slight increase there that's due to the cost of items going up. So we had to account for that. Also, instructional materials and books, that's increasing. And our instructional technology. And toward the end, you'll be able to see my line items, and I can speak to more of those increases. So I'm looking for a change in the budget of $22,239. And as we go through this, some of that is due to the district budget and the ESSER funds funding. And we're not getting that funding from the district budget or the ESSER funds. They've been added onto our budget. So that's why there's a little bit of an increase there. And I have those numbers later on to go over with you. Page 9, my capital improvement requests have pretty much remained the same. We're still looking at getting air conditioning in the circle. And because of the programs, a lot of those students need air conditioning. And when they're in the general ed classrooms in the circle, we need to make sure that that's provided for them as well. We still need replacement of carpets. We're actually have been replacing the carpet with tiles. Last summer, we replaced 3 of the 2nd grade classrooms. So we're looking to actually replace it, not with so much carpet, but with the tiles. That's worked out great. But we have carpet like in some of our preschool rooms, and moving down to the kindergarten rooms that eventually needs to be replaced. It's really old and it's buckled in some cases. So it's time to look at putting all tiles to those classrooms, which I think is easier for the custodians to clean and easier to keep the classroom clean, not having that carpet, but replacing it with tiles. We do need new carpet in the auditorium and the 2 round rooms right when you come in NES, the story room and the room upstairs directly above that. And then we're looking to do something in the office. The carpet here is getting pretty old and pretty flat. So we're looking to maybe take that out and put tile in here as well. Painting of the entire school. I've been talking to Kyle about researching options and costs and getting us on a maintenance plan because the building is looking a little old. The addition was, I think, 98 that it was added on, and a lot of it hasn't been repainted, and a lot of areas in the building are looking a little worn. So we want to keep our inside of the building looking just as nice as the outside. We also have some areas that we need new tiles. The tiles are really cracked. The 3rd and 4th grade corridor, the kindergarten corridor are really, you can see the wear and tear. The tiles are cracked and they're looking a little unsightly. So if we can get those nice tiles that we have in, we're starting to put in the circle through our hallways, that would be great. And then our bathrooms need a little bit of work too. It's the partitions. They're looking old. They're showing rust. Our bathrooms really at NES could use an overhaul. They're the original bathrooms, and we have the partitions and we have them secure, but over time that's not going to last. So that's something I think is pretty crucial. We want the bathrooms to be nice for the students when they go in there, but not too nice because we don't want them staying too long, but they do need some work. Yeah, we have some students who like to go to the bathroom, so we don't want to make it too nice, but it could use a little upkeep. And moving on to, these are more the line items that I'll address some of the increases on page 10. On principal supplies and materials, just, the office supplies, I just increased that by 50 because we're finding that some of the prices on things have gone up. So we want to make sure we have that covered. Nothing else has changed there. Moving on to page 11. You can see that the total education supplies has increased, and that's due to inflation and the cost of items. We really research what we order to see if the price has gone up to kind of know what to increase, and there has been an increase. So that's increased around 1,400 approximately. And then if you move down to instructional materials, I have a few new items in there. The AMC Anywhere assessment is an assessment that we're using with kindergartners, and it's been very effective. And we're kind of piloting this year, and we're going to take the assessment data from this and align it to our benchmarks data in January to see if it actually has been making a difference. Dr. Page, our math specialist, has been using that with a lot of students for intervention. It's important to us to front load and really get those math skills developed in K through 2, really, as the research shows that if students don't have those skills at that level, it's really hard to catch them up. So we're really front loading, using as many assessments to make sure that we're providing the appropriate interventions. The 24 game edition Games and Award is something that we started last year. It's a competition and a tournament that the students do. We want to make math fun for students. And we piloted this last year with grades 4 to 6. And it's a tournament where they're working on their math facts. And we actually did a little live streaming with some other classrooms as they were competing. And it was great fun. And we had students in the upper grades going down and showing the younger grades how to do this type of competition. So we want to make sure that students enjoy mathematics. And then the 150 there is from our Rubik's Cube team. Great problem solving. And then our math breakout boxes is also for enrichment. As I said before, we want to make sure our students on the high end are getting challenged as well, and we're providing opportunities for them. And then Math Olympiad went up slightly, and that is for, we have 3 teams, and it's grades 4 to 6. It's math enrichment that we provide for students. We actually have parents come in that volunteer for that, and that's also done with Dr. Page. A big jump that was funded through ESSER funds is our CKLA consumables. So that was something that I did not have in my budget, and you can see it's quite the increase. And then I just want to note that our English language arts text, we're looking for more decodable books. A lot of that came with CKLA, but there are still some areas that we could use some books on. So that's reduced quite a bit, but we're still looking for some decodable books for intervention. And then there was an increase in our Wilson materials, and that includes interventions, and that includes our foundations that we're using in grades K to 3. So there's a little bit of an increase there. And then the mystery science is something that was funded through ESSER that the teachers have really used a lot. It's supplements. And mostly in the upper grades, we find STEM scopes is good, but there are some areas that it's missing aligned to the standards. And I know my content math teacher said that this really made a difference in what they were offering the students. And then another change is computer mice. So we have now Chromebooks in 1st and 2nd grade, and we're finding that the students really need the mice to manipulate them better. So we're asking for mice for our students in 1st and 2nd grade. Okay, so I'm going to turn to the next page. And I'm going to move you down to special education and supplies. Most of that whole area, special education and supplies, are testing protocols that we use and when we're testing students to see if they qualify for special education. And we're finding that the Berry VMI is mostly we're using for a lot of the students in the ALPS program. So that's something that we need to assess them. So there's a little bit of an increase there, $140. And then moving down to instructional technology, you're going to see that there's a bit of an increase in our iReady instructional, which we use for reading and math for grades 3 to 5. We use that for progress monitoring and our benchmark assessment. That is something that we definitely need. And then the Foundations Hub, that was, it's an online resource that the teachers use with foundations. It used to be free, now they're charging, but it's a resource that the teachers use on a daily basis. So that's an increase of 1,000. And then if you move to page 13, Reflex and FRAC are online math supplements in math fact fluency and around fractions. FRAC is for fractions. That's something that we use for interventions. And it really makes a big difference in math fact fluency. It's key that students know their math facts, and we want to provide as many types of interventions and resources to help them learn that, because if they don't have that as they go through the grades, it really hinders them when they start learning higher level mathematics. IXL is something that we've been, again, front loading in grade 1 that the teachers say is making a big difference. It's for math concepts reinforcement. It's they can go on and use that on the computer, and that has been really successful. We notice a big difference in students' skills. And then Braining Camp, that's an online math manipulative that originally was funded by ESSER, which is now in my budget. So overall, if you move down to the total supplies and services, there's an increase of 22,239. I just want to point out that 14,000 of that and 337 is from funding from the district prior in ESSER funds, and we no longer have that, so I need that in my budget. So really, if you take that out, I'm really looking for an increase of $7,902 outside of what we've taken on from ESSER in the district. Okay, are there any questions?
Anybody have any questions for Beth? Paul Goldner?
I guess I just want to say, I was just having a discussion today with the AP Calculus teacher at Newburyport and talking about how the problems that we're seeing in the upper levels with the science and the math skills are foundational skills in like K through 3. And I really like, there's an investment in this budget in K through 3 science and math skills. And I think that's an area we've seen that our students are behind sometimes, or maybe not as far as we would like them, and putting some resources towards that in this budget. So I like to see that. Yeah,
just like reading, front loading in math pays off as well. And if we can get those, they have strong number sense when leaving kindergarten. If we really can work on that in 1st grade, it's going to make the difference. And then with their math facts as well, As you know, Paul, teaching, you probably have students in some of your classes who have some weak areas that have to do number sense, possibly. But we want to make sure that they have those skills, because if they don't have them, then you get in 4th grade, 5th grade intervention. You can do intervention, but it's not going to make the impact that it can when you front load and really make sure they have the skills. And they're like sponges. They want to learn those. They want to do the online games and online type of interventions, and they want to learn. So we're trying to make it fun too with some of the things we're doing, so it's not boring. But I think key is also making that connection to the real life mathematics with the kids at a younger age. They really understand the meaning as they go up through.
Paul Mayette,
I was just looking, can you hear me?
Yes, just fine. Trying to find you on the screen.
I recalled last year you had mentioned specifically the 3rd and 4th grade corridor tiles and the painting. Is that something that's getting worse? I know we talked about, I think that got set aside in the end, but I'm wondering if that's is that rising up the priority list?
It has cracks, and they're not looking as well. I know in the 3rd and 4th grade area, we really need to do a lot of investigating and figuring out why there is some water damage there before we invest. But I've talked to Kyle about that, looking at that. And like I said last year, I was walking that little preschooler down the hallway, and he asked me why my school was so cracked, and it was to do to the cracks in the tile. So even the preschoolers are noticing. So it's just the wear and tear over time.
does anybody else have any questions?
I think Paul Goldner's hand is back up.
Paul Goldner?
Figured I'd give someone else a chance, but just with the OTA position, you mentioned that there's meetings or student cancellation of services now. If we have too many of those, that could potentially put us in violation of IEPs, or
We try to make up those times and offer compensatory services if we need to. But when they don't have those services on a regular basis, it does impact them, especially when our occupational therapist is just maybe that very, very close to having a student master one of their IEP goals. Just keep it consistent, and just have more support for those students is key.
I don't see any more hands up. So thank you very
Thanks.
much, Beth.
I was going to just one clarification on the capital. Again, Newbury owns Newbury Elementary School, Rowley owns Pine Grove School, Salisbury. We're in Salisbury Elementary. We're in the process of Salisbury owning Salisbury Elementary School. So just with regard to those capital expenses and requests, there's work. If there was anything funded, we would need to work with the town, because again, we continue to tease out that landlord tenant concept. So just making sure that concept is clear. Thank you, Beth.
Okay, thank you.
And next is Pine Grove. Ms. Perrier.
Hello, everyone. I am going to start on page 2, the executive summary. This 2024 budget request is presented by the principal, Nicole Perrier, on behalf of the school council and staff at Pine Grove School. Listed below are our 4 goals that we currently have for our school improvement plan. And in order to meet these goals and be successful at these goals and continue to meet the needs of all of our students, I have some requests that I will speak about during my budget presentation. Some of the several key areas that I'm going to talk about is that I'm going to be requesting an addition of 0.5 special education teacher, 0.5 social worker, and 0.7 STEAM teacher that we would be requesting. I'm now going to move down to capital spending, and I just wanted to touch upon that briefly, that obviously we're all aware we had our huge renovation project not too long ago. So the PGS building renovation project was completed in September 2019, which has resulted in no capital spending requests. The school has been maintained since the building project, utilizing the existing custodial maintenance and supply budget line items. Proactive maintenance has included the painting of walls and other routine expected projects that we would think would take place. All right, moving to page 4. I'm going to talk about current and projected enrollments. One thing that I do want to say is that we are right now, there's a question mark, obviously, with kindergarten, but I will say, as it's not a big surprise, that the population of Rowley is growing quickly. We have seen a huge increase in the population of Pine Grove School, and the last 2 years has forced us to have 4 kindergarten classrooms. Last year, when I looked at the census, it was predicting that we would need 3, but we ended up having 4. So a lot of the projections from next year will be based on our kindergarten registration that will take place the first week in February. So that will drive a lot of what will be projected next year at Pine Grove School. One thing that I do want to make note of is that currently our first grade is 4, but our second grade has 2 classrooms, but next year that will be going up to 4 classrooms. Where in 3rd grade, they currently have 3 classrooms, and that will be going down to 2 classrooms. When I had chatted about the number of preschool and kindergarten sections and students in each class will be developed after registration in January, and kindergarten projections in the past 2 years have resulted in having 4 classrooms due to the current population increase in Rowley. But I do want to say that if the incoming kindergarten continues to follow the trend of recent years, we will need to hire an additional classroom teacher. Looking at our current enrollments, I'd like to make note of next year's grade 5, where you are seeing 46 students, and that is a lower number. But due to some recent changes, I am concerned, very concerned of bringing that particular cohort down to 2 classes. So currently I'm keeping it at 3, but if kindergarten goes to 3 classes, I would not have to hire an additional teacher. But if kindergarten was to go to 4 classes, I would have to request an additional teacher. I just wanted to make that known. And my reason being for keeping that grade, next year's 5th grade, that's why I do not want to drop it down to 2 with those low numbers. Moving, actually, I'm going to go to page 5 real quick, and then I'm going to talk about the positions that we're requesting. We are requesting a 0.5 special education teacher, so that would bring us from this year to 8.4 to 8.9. I am also going to be requesting in our guidance professional. Currently, we have 1.5, which next year projected with that request would be 2 positions. And then the third one would be, currently we have a 0.3 STEAM and SEL teacher, which would bring it to 1.4 next year. So those are the staff increases. So it would bring it to 72.4 to 74.8 with the requests that I'm making for next year. Moving on to page 6. I wanted to spend a little extra time, especially with the request for our part-time special education teacher. And this is why I have Shauna McGee, our rating specialist, with us tonight. I think that she could agree with me, and she's going to speak a little bit. This position is imperative to Pine Grove School to keep moving in the direction to where we are moving currently. Due to obviously the dyslexic guidelines that have been released in the state of Massachusetts, as well as the pandemic, as well as the amount of IST referrals that we're getting, the amount of special education referrals that we're getting. And due to ESSER funds being depleted, we currently have 2 Wilson tutors at Pine Grove School to meet the needs of the dyslexic population. Additionally, we have required Wilson practicum candidate to work with a student who was placed on an IEP after the start of the school year. She works approximately 4 hours a week. The other 2 Wilson tutors, they work a total of 24 hours per week. Currently, 36 students receive specialized reading instruction at Pine Grove School. Next year, 29 students will require continued services based on their IEPs. Also, due to the Massachusetts dyslexia guidelines, we anticipate in identifying additional students. With this anticipated increase, a part-time qualified special education teacher will prove essential in fully complying with the dyslexic guidelines in providing appropriate intensive instruction. Currently, the 2 Wilson tutors are being funded by our ESSER funds, which have been depleted. We have worked hard to establish early identification and a co-teaching model that has emphasized primary grade reading instruction in order to reduce the need of specialized reading instruction in the future. Without this position, our reading specialist and our interventionist would spend the majority of their day servicing special education students and would be unable to support classroom teachers in Tier 1 reading instruction. So currently, these Wilson tutors that are implementing all of these Wilson and OG services, all these intensified reading instructions, it's being paid by ESSER funds. Those are gone next year. That's 24 hours of instruction. And without that special education teacher, Shauna McGee and Abby, our reading interventionist, they're going to be having to service special education students. As Paul, as you were talking about earlier, we were talking about doubling down and front loading. Our goal at Pine Grove is to front load and double down in these younger grades. And Sean is going to speak to some of the work that we've been doing where we are really seeing the results. And I am really concerned that having to pull Shauna and having to pull Abby away from these students that need these intensified reading instruction would be detrimental to the success of our students at Pine Grove. So Sean is going to speak a little bit about what we've been working on, some of the plans that we've put in place, and why we really think it's important to have this 0.5 special education teacher.
Can you hear me? Or should I move closer? You can hear me. All right, great. So yeah, I'm just going to add a little more detail to what Nicole has already laid out for you about why the special ed position is important for us. According to the International Dyslexia Association, anywhere from 15 to 20% of the general population is or has some symptoms of dyslexia. So if you thought about our population K through 6 at Pine Grove, that would give you approximately 55 to 77 students who are struggling with some form of dyslexia. Now, it's a range of a spectrum of the learning disability. So not all of those students are going to require specialized reading instruction, but that's, we can easily see why this year we have, what was it, 36 students receiving specialized reading. So you can see that's not a number that's, way out of whack with what where it should be. So as Nicole said, we've been working really hard the past several years to try to meet the needs and double down, like Beth was talking about with the math, double down in the lowest grades so that we're being proactive and giving these kids the appropriately intensive, systematic, explicit instruction that they need in reading in the earliest grades, K1, 2, to really prevent future reading failures. So you may have all heard, it's they say about how you can predict prison populations from a community from 3rd grade reading scores. Well, now they're saying even at the end of 1st grade, if students aren't reading at the average of their peers, you can predict that those students will struggle as they go on. So really, you need to get to them by 1st grade. And the way we've tried to do that at Pine Grove is to establish a co-teaching model that Nicole mentioned. So the reading interventionist and I, as well as a special education teacher and our EL teacher, right now are currently going into each first grade classroom. We have 4 first grade classrooms every day during the phonics instruction period, the foundations time, to co-teach with the classroom teacher. We're also getting into both second grade classrooms to do the same thing. And this allows us to differentiate the instruction as needed, to give certain children extra time with a certain concept as needed. It allows the reading interventionist and I and the special education teacher to get to know all of the reading abilities of all of our youngest kids so that we can design more appropriate interventions if they are needed. And as Nicole said, we've seen some great success with this approach. For example, last year, DIBBLS is an early literacy screener that the district uses for all students K through 3. At the beginning of last year, 55% of our entering first grade students were deemed at risk by the DIBBLS composite score. And through the co-teaching model, we were able to reduce that by year end to only 23%. And of that 23%, only 6%, which was 2 students, were deemed needing an intensive level of support. So from 55% to really only 6% needing intensive support, according to the DIBBLS composite, was huge growth for us. Again, we were able to do this preventative work because we were able to increase that interventionist position last year to full-time, which gives us the manpower and the available personnel to be able to get into every first grade class and every second grade class on a daily basis. Let's see. So as Nicole said, currently, even with all of this, the reading interventionist and I are still providing specialized reading services to, between the two of us. 5 of our instructional periods are delivering specialized reading instruction to small groups of students. And so if we are losing the Wilson or Orton Gillingham tutors that we're currently contracting out to due to the loss of ESSER funds, then we're going to have to pick that up, obviously, because these are IEP services that the students need. And so literally the reading interventionist and I will be delivering specialized reading instruction or special ed services probably for the majority of our day, which will then prevent us from being able to go into classrooms to co-teach, to do even regular win time interventions that are not special ed services. So that is why if we could add the half-time special education teacher, it would, to have that person help absorb the specialized reading services that is currently being covered by the tutors, is such an essential request. Right.
All right, thanks, Shauna. All right, moving on, we're also requesting a part-time social worker. As Beth said, thank you so much for allowing us a part-time social worker last year. Working with Julie Godbout has been amazing. The work that she has done with the students has been something that was needed. As we all know, since the pandemic, in the year 2023, we've seen an increase in the amount of stress that students have. We've seen an increase in the amount of anxiety that students have, in fear and sadness. I find myself more, making phone calls home about students that, aren't coming to school, kids that are having trouble, self-regulating and coping skills. We've just, as we all know, we've seen an increase in that. And currently, Kyle Campbell, he is our guidance counselor. He is currently seeing 26 students on IEPs and 504s. Those were scheduled, and he meets with those students 1 to 2 times a week. He also is currently running our ISED meetings, and that's once a month, working with staff daily, trying to develop plans to support students, but also support staff. He's also working anywhere from 12 to 20 students weekly with social emotional concerns that are not on any type of IEP or on any type of 504. These are just students that are struggling social emotionally, and he is working with them. He's also working with staff constantly on mentoring them and how to work with students that are struggling social emotionally. And then he's having anywhere from 2 to 6 lunch bunches a week. And this can be anywhere from 2 students at once all the way to 6 students at once. So that's Kyle Campbell, what he's currently working with. Then we have Julie Godbout, who is our part-time social worker. She currently is working weekly, once a week. She has 14 students that she works with. She has one times every 30 days. So once a month, she has 3 students that she meets with them. And then she also has 8 other students that she's working with that have support that she needs to check in when she's here. I also do want to say that we have 4 additional students that were just currently referred and will be divided between Kyle and Julie Godbout. If you were to add up those students and compare it with our population, that's 20% of our students are currently receiving social emotional support. And that does not include all of the students that are coming down to my office for social emotional support, going to Elise Earls, our assistant principal, for social emotional support. We have lots of children that are going to the nurse's office for social emotional support, working alongside the nurse from what is it that's, you know, if they're having a medical challenge or is it some anxiety? So working with those students. So there are more students. I do think it's worth noting that we feel like if PGS had a second full-time counselor versus a 0.5 counselor social worker, we may also have the ability to do preventative groups. These preventative groups could be coping skills, anger management, social skills, anxiety, for all of the students who aren't actually at tier 3 intervention levels yet, but could use some additional skills so they do not get to tier 3. Teaching these skills would decrease the challenges that they're having in the classroom and will support students to be ready to learn. When a child is struggling socially and emotionally, they cannot engage in the learning or reach their full potential. This is why we think it's important that we have a full-time social worker at Pine Grove. Moving on to our STEAM teacher. I won't read everything that we wrote. We had the exact same write-up that NES had. I know that all 3 elementary schools share the same concerns as well as the same strengths and need of having a full-time STEAM teacher. But I did want to talk a little bit about Jo Leet. I know that she had spoken about the benefits and the powerful lessons that she had done this year with students during STEAM. But I do want to say, as the principal of the school, that the number of skill sets and creativity and 21st century skills that I have observed in this classroom was astonishing. I saw students building resilience because they needed to solve a problem while collaborating with a group of students. I saw students working independently, exploring how they would get a bridge to stand tall or sound and energy to transfer. I saw students leaving saying that they just had the best time ever, and why do we have to wait so long to do it again? Having students this excited about learning says it all. It gives a skill set that will govern the way that they think and the way that they behave. Merging science, technology, arts, engineering, and mathematics, STEAM education helps us solve world challenges today. And one thing I will tell you that Jo Leet said to me, she said the biggest impact that she has seen working with our students is that students are trusting themselves, and she's seeing them persevere through the hardest challenges. So I say that that speaks volumes of what an impact STEAM makes to the students at Triton Regional School District at the elementary levels. So that is why I want to request a full-time STEAM teacher. All right. So at the bottom of page 7, I am requesting, I had currently 72.4, and then for next year, 2024, 74.8. That's a 2.4 change and a salary increase of $152,000 $897. And then moving down to page 8, I won't repeat a lot what Beth said, but obviously increases in certain line items are due to inflation. So a lot of the increases that you will see will be that 7% inflation increase. When looking at costs of things, there wasn't anything that did not go up at least 7%. And that's why you're going to see an increase in certain lines in my supplies and service budget requests. All right. I'm going to move down to page 9, and due to the completion of the renovation project, I am not requesting any capital improvement requests at this time. Principal supplies and materials, I just did the 7% increase there. Same, I kept principal professional, kept it the same. Pretty much everything on this page was due to the increase of 7% inflation. So I'll move on. Instructional materials and books. I'll try not to repeat anything that Beth said, but throughout the 3 elementary schools, we use the same curriculums. We use a lot of the same supplies. So you're going to see the increase. A lot of the increases are due to the ESSA funds being depleted, as well as just subscriptions going up a lot. And some of these lines went up due to them giving it free during COVID. And then this year, it's when you're hooked, now it's going up to the full price. I think Beth had spoken about the Foundations Fun Hub is free until July 1st, and then they're charging us. So that's where that $1,500 comes up. The biggest increase you're going to see is the CKLA consumables that they need with our current CKLA program that we're using for our reading. So that was a big increase. Also, Beth had talked about, Wilson, our foundations. When we had put in our request last year, we had requested $5,000, but it ended up costing us $7,000. Also, with the increase of population at Pine Grove, having to add another class in each grade level each year, that is costing us more as well. Having to buy foundation materials, having to buy consumable workbooks, having to buy the math and focus materials, all of that is impacting Pine Grove's budget, having to go up more because of the population increase. That is instructional materials and books, and that's where you're going to see the biggest increase, because I did put there is anything that was just a curriculum paid for or ESSER funds that have now been depleted. Moving on, special education supplies, that's at the top of page 12. Just as Beth had talked about, it's your testing materials, and I won't go through all of that. That increase that I did was a 7% inflation increase on that line. And there was nothing else that was impacted by costs. They're all with the inflation of 7%. So this year, I am asking an increase. 74,901 was last year, and this year 97,006. That is a 22,105 increase. But just as Beth had said, if you were to deduct ESSER funds as well as district funds that they paid for, I am only increasing $4,425 in my budget. And that's it.
Thank you, Nicole. Does anybody have any questions for Nicole? Susanna.
Hi.
Hi.
Hey, I just wanted to have like Shannon and Shauna weigh in again, and yourself weigh in again on the special education requirements for the Wilson. Especially as the phases, so that a child or student will go through. This doesn't necessarily carry on till middle school, correct? And then into high school. Like, this is kind of like your return on investment once you do this in in the elementary side, because once you get into the middle school, high school, it drastically just, I don't want to speak that there's not as much need once you get to middle school and high school, but it's drastic amount because you're completely rewiring, if you like. That's how it was described to me, rewiring of how to read again, how to learn to read. So you're
Right.
doing it at the upfront. I just want the committee members to understand that in terms of what you might have to spend up front now is something that may not, and I don't want to speak to this, Shannon, of what you may not have to do once you get into higher levels of education. I could be wrong.
You're absolutely right. Shauna can speak to it further too, but you want to get them when they're younger, because as I think it was Nicole said, or Beth said, they're sponges and they will buy into more of the Wilson. It's very hard to get high school students and middle school students to really make progress in Wilson and really buy into it. So if we can get them going at the lower grades, and especially what Nicole is doing at PGS in kindergarten, first grade, second grade, a lot of those kids won't even need Wilson because they'll get that tier 1 support. So you definitely want to, just like they said about the math, you want to put the time in at the foundational levels.
And I will say, and I'm sure Shauna wants to weigh in, is that is our goal here. And, I was a 5th grade teacher here. I was a 6th grade teacher, and we don't want to see the students in the upper grades. And as Susanna was just saying, in middle school, but we have to be proactive right now. And we just have these systems in place where it's all hands on deck. And we use those Wilson and OG tutors to help with these intensified reading services. And if they're gone next year, somebody like Shauna and somebody like Abby McGee, who is in the classrooms working with large, Abby Rydbeck, sorry, Abby McGee.
She used to go here.
She actually used to go here, Abby McGee. But if we take that away, we're not going to be able to continue doubling down in these lower grades. And like Beth had talked about the math, you have to build the foundation, looking in my, in my supplies, and, you see a $3,700, the fracts and reflex that we're asking for in math. But in order to build a strong foundation in math, like that's something you need, because they say that the two go together. But that's exactly the same thing with reading, where we have to build a foundation when these kids are younger. And if we miss the mark, that's what Suzanne is talking about. And you're going to see in middle school. So you have to be proactive now to eliminate in the future. And I feel like we just got started at Pine Grove and we've been doing it, but we really have made some changes in the last couple of years and we want to keep doing it. And if we don't get the special education teacher, we're not going to be able to do what we're doing right now. Do you want to?
I was just going to say, it's not just the buy-in, but you can literally change the brains of young students and how they work. If you look at a brain scan of a dyslexic child, that looks much different from a typical reader, but you can literally change how the brain looks with systematic intensive instruction. And it's much easier to do that in a younger child. That's why we have to do it early. Then, obviously the brain becomes less plastic as kids get older. And as far as needing those services in middle school, it's totally dependent on the child. Some children will still need a high level of support with intensified reading instruction through middle school, depending on the nature of their disability. But our goal, like everyone has said, is to reduce that number as much as possible so that they're able to participate in grade level content, reading and writing without the intensive specialized reading support. And that's why we're doing all of this to double down in the lower grades and giving the kids in the elementary school the intensive support that they need now.
Thank you. Does anybody else have any questions for Nicole? Thank you very much to both of you.
You're welcome.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
everyone.
And now,
And Paul Goldner had his hand raised.
oh, I'm sorry, Paul, I didn't see
Not
it.
off the hook yet, Nicole.
Just had a clarification. As you were talking, you mentioned 3 fifth grade teachers, but the document I'm looking at here has 15, 15, and 16, but it also only specifies 2 classes of fifth grade. We're talking about 3 sections of fifth grade. Is that correct?
Oh, yes, I'm glad you said that. That should be a 3. Thank you for pointing that out. I am requesting to keep it at 3. We'll change that.
Okay, now we have Mrs. Daw from Salisbury Elementary.
Thank you and good evening, everyone. There's something to be said for going first, but then going last means you're all tired and you've already spent the money that we're going to be requesting. So kind of makes me feel like I'm in the back seat here. But I do want to begin with a little bit of a kind of narrative in terms of just the uniqueness of Salisbury. And when I came, my biggest thing was it's all about our kids aren't different. You know, our kids are students that need to be educated, that deserve a quality education, just like every other student in the district. And, you know, we have lived up to that. And my job is to make sure that I instill a culture of success and growth and positive learning experiences. And I think all of us here at Salisbury are working towards that, and we're doing a really good job at it. And you began the meeting tonight by talking about the Triton vision statement, and we have an unwavering commitment to meeting the needs of all students. And I do think in many ways, Salisbury has unique needs because of the students that we have. But I do want to talk about the positives for a minute. And I'm going to start by looking at the school improvement plan, which starts with the conditions of success in the district. The first one talks about instructional practice and having instruction that is differentiated with student engagement and continual growth. And that begins with providing students with high quality instruction. And I have to say, I can't be more proud and more impressed with the work that the teachers here at Salisbury do. They really work really, really hard, and nothing stops them from moving forward. So I think they do give our students high quality instruction. I think the next one is curriculum, and the district has done a fabulous job with updating curriculum and providing updated resources for all of our students. You know, when I listen to other districts and I'm interviewing candidates to come to Salisbury, I'm amazed they don't have the same kind of resources or backing that we have here at Salisbury. And I don't think sometimes we appreciate what we have, because sometimes you're always looking at what more we need. But we are very fortunate with all of the resources that the district has provided for the schools. In terms of social emotional as another condition of success, having the social emotional teacher this year has proven to be a great asset to our students. She does go into classrooms. We wish it could be more, but she has made connections with students in the classrooms. She's made herself available at lunches, and she's worked with teachers to kind of implement greater strategies in the daily work that the teachers do. And I think that makes a difference in the classes as well. In terms of communication for our values and our conditions of success, the district has always been open and responsive in all ways. I can't thank Anna and Shannon enough, most recently too, but you know, we've had some struggles, and there's not a moment that they're not there willing to come in and be a resource to Salisbury. And I'm very appreciative of that, because the communication remains open and everybody is willing to listen. And then the last thing is resources and materials. And we do have resources, and we do have materials, and we have great opportunities for PD for our staff. And that does make a difference for our students who are learning and our teachers who are teaching. So I just want to talk about, like, I guess to me, it's also important to talk about the good things that are happening. And now I'll talk about the things that we still need, even those good things are happening. If you look at the DESE data, Salisbury has 47.4% low-income students. 47.4%. Just to make a comparison, Newbury has 21.1 and Pine Grove has 22.7. Now, everybody needs things, but when you look at that data and you look at the students that are here at Salisbury, they do have more obstacles to overcome. I mean, it's evident, it's there, and it's in front of us. However, we can develop the skills and the traits that are necessary for their success if we have the right tools to get them there. Some of the things that we've been fortunate to have, we have Title I here at Salisbury, and that's based on a grant. And it's been a huge success for our kids, and it's been a great resource. Kids are learning and they're enjoying what they're doing, and it really does help the students, the ones that are in Title I, but it also helps them when they get back into the classroom. Our PTA has been an incredible resource for us in providing whatever we need. If teachers need materials, if teachers need supplies, they're always asking us what we need. And then they also provide a ton of enrichment for all of our students, and that's an important part of education. So for us, that PTA group is hugely important in what we've been able to do with our kids. So I'll kind of move on to what I'm going to specifically be asking for at this point. If I look at, I'm going to start on, why aren't my pages numbered? My pages aren't numbered. I truly apologize for that. It's the page that is talking about the supervisor of students. And I really apologize for that. I think it must be, is that page 3? Does anybody have it numbered in front of them? Is it page 3?
It is.
All right, I apologize for that. I'll try to go from there. So my first request is to continue being able to have our supervisor of students in the building. This past year, we were able to, with the ESSER funds, have a supervisor of students who serviced our kids in conjunction with helping so that Jane and I could become greater instructional leaders in the building and work with teachers on instruction and curriculum and be in the classes more often so that we can be those resources for teachers. The supervisor of students has proven to be an exceptional resource for us. He has strengthened our ability to be able to respond proactively to students and not be reactive all the time. We know that poverty and stress do impact student behavior. So our kids probably don't bounce back as easily as some other students might. And they need the opportunity to process what is going on with them. And the supervisor of students that we have right now was trained in the collaborative problem solving method and has utilized that in almost every interaction that he has with students. And teachers have turned to him to help work with students at both a tier 1 and a tier 2 level in getting students more ready for learning and more ready to be engaged in that. And it doesn't have to take long. Oftentimes, if he's in a classroom and he's helping out with a class, and he notices something's going on, he can pull that student aside, take them out, talk to them for just a few minutes, and get them back in class and engaged back in the learning so that they're not missing it. Whereas in the past, they maybe were sent down to the office, they have to wait for the principal or the assistant principal to be available to talk with them. And this way, we're able to keep the students in the classroom and keep the students on track for learning throughout all parts of their day. So we have found that to be a very valuable position, and we actually very much so would like that to continue to be included in our budget moving forward. On page 4 is the request that the other elementary schools have also given, and that is to increase the STEM teacher to a full-time position. And I could repeat what both Beth and Nicole have stated. I'm very excited about the students' excitement when they're in that class and when they're asking when Miss Leet is coming back, and when they're asking, when are we going to have a chance to brainstorm, think about what we might want to build the next time she comes. Most recently, I was in there and the kids were making back scratchers. And it was fabulous to see the great different ideas that the kids put together on their own. And then they would share ideas with the others that were at the table, and build off of what they were able to do together. It's amazing that the process that she uses with the engineering design process, where students have to, first of all, they have to make a blueprint. They have to consider, what is the problem we're trying to fix? What is it that we can do? So gather data based on what we know, and then look at the data to kind of fix what they have created. But they have to create that first before they get right into building their actual item. So it's teaching them to persevere through things, to collaborate, to reason through, why did something work? What can I do better the next time I do it? And all of those are skills that are definitely going to carry over into other academic classes. It's certainly not just for the STEAM or the STEM classes. It is definitely something that will carry over in every academic classroom that they will be in. And so we have the space for it. It would for us be another special in the student schedule. And we do feel like it would impact lots more areas than a STEM area. It would impact learning in all of the different academic components. Okay, that was page 4. So on page 5, just want to make sure we're on the right page. That's the projected enrollments. Is that correct?
Enrollments is page 4.
That's page 4.
Correct.
Sorry. And again, my apologies for not having the numbers. So on page 4 with the projected enrollments, as you're looking down for the number of students coming into us in 23-24, and you can see the difference in the number of students and my number of classes that I am projecting for 23-24. And then we look at class size. So I am asking I currently have 4 6th grade classrooms. I don't need 4 6th grade classrooms next year. So what I would like to do is move one of the 6th grade teachers, let's say, down to 4th grade. And that would allow me to have 4 4th grade classrooms with reasonable numbers. I am also asking for an additional 3rd grade classroom, because that also is one of our higher enrolled classrooms. And so I would like those classes to be smaller class sizes. I think we all know that class sizes impact student learning. And the students in the 3rd and 4th grades were the ones most impacted by the gaps that they have gaps in their instructional learning because of where they were during the years that we were in the pandemic. And so those students are the ones that are going to need much more individualized attention, differentiated instruction. And by making those class sizes smaller, it will allow for teachers to really be able to meet the needs of the students in those classes. It's really, really difficult to have students to have 23, 22, 21 students with such varied needs in the classes, and the teachers trying to address the social emotional needs in addition to the academic needs, in addition to the behavioral needs. And it is true that we at Salisbury, some of those needs are greater than maybe in other schools at this time. So I'm really am begging for the ability to keep my 6th grade teacher, but move it down to 4th, and then be able to have an extra 3rd grade teacher. And I'm going to put it right out there, because I know when you do your discussions later, you're going to look at my 3rd grade classes. I know you are. And you're going to say, okay, well, wait a minute, 12, 13, 13. Why not just condense those and make 2 2nd grade classrooms? I would say the reason why we wouldn't want to do that is because we don't want to take away from something that's working, something that we can actually give to the kids and help them become and continue to be successful in their learning. Instead of continuing to forge ahead and move in the positive direction, let's not take away something that's working to pay for something else. So I just know it's there, and I know the numbers are in front of us. And I would ask that those classes be allowed to stay in that same class size as well. So moving on to page 5, the budget requests. So the difference in the regular ed professional staff is the 0.7 STEM teacher, in addition to another grade level teacher. I'm also requesting another tier 1 support. So most of my requests right now are tier 1 supports. Everyone always needs additional tier 2 supports, and those are always very beneficial to kids. I feel like right now, if we could increase our ability to have tier 1 supports for our students, that's a place that we might be able to even get more bang for our buck with the students and give them what they need while they're in the classroom. My hope is that we can continue with our co-teaching implementation. It hasn't moved forward as easily or as quickly as I had hoped here at Salisbury. But I think we need to get the right people in the right positions who are willing to practice and try with a co-teaching model. And we just need to encourage that more often and give teachers the opportunity to take the risk and try it. I don't think at Salisbury right now, that's something that a lot of teachers have the energy to give to. And if we were able to provide them with more support, and in addition to even smaller class sizes, I think they would have more energy and more willingness to give the co-teaching a try, which would really truly help the students in the classroom. Because it would put 2 teachers in a classroom helping all of the students and not just a small group that might be pulled out. So another request I have for tier 1 is for a data instruction specialist. Now, when I was thinking about that, I didn't really want to focus on a reading specialist or a math specialist. I wanted someone that could be in the classes, working with the teachers and working with all the teachers and looking at data and finding strategies that could be implemented within the classroom, regardless if it's reading or math. But to help the teachers provide specialized support, intensive support in the classroom where kids would not need to be pulled out for that support. But with smaller class sizes, then they would be able to continue moving forward with best practices that would work for everybody. This instructional support personnel also would be able to provide some grade level PD, could run grade level team meetings, help teachers differentiate instruction in the classrooms. Another thing I truly think we're lacking here at Salisbury is our ability to engage families. for whatever reason, that hasn't happened. So either we haven't done a good job at it, and I'll take ownership on that. We need to do a better job, because I think if we can engage more families, it's going to make a difference for those kids. It's going to make a difference for all the kids. And we need to get the families to buy into all the great things that are happening at Salisbury, and to help us to give their kids a successful education. So this person, I would also ask to be able to help us increase our family and community engagement with all students in all classes. So going back to page 5, looking at the math reading professional, it did increase by 1, and that increase of 1 is the data instructional specialist. It looks like Title I math reading professional went up, but this year, mid-year, we did hire a math Title I teacher. So we actually are at 4 this year, but it was midway through the year. So it's not an increase for next year. The Title I staffing would stay the same. And the total number of instructional assistants is the same this year as last. We just reallocated them into different positions, but the total number of instructional assistants is not changing my request. It's staying the same from last year to this year. And then the only other additional budget request on that sheet would be the supervisor of students. I'd like to add one more thing in terms of the supervisor of students. When I was talking to individuals about the budget and what people felt they needed here and what would benefit us at Salisbury, I was talking with my social worker and my guidance counselor, as well as the assistant principal. And in deciding, like, should we opt for requesting another guidance counselor? Should we look at another social worker? Everyone at the table said that the utilization of the supervisor of students was so valuable that they saw that position as being something that they wanted to support more than asking for another social worker or another guidance counselor. Now, that was coming from the social worker and the guidance counselor. So they work very closely with the supervisor of students, and they work collaboratively together, but they truly see the benefit of having a person in that position and see the value for them, because it allows them to then respond to the greater needs of the social and emotional aspect of students. They didn't have to. Sometimes guidance counselors and social workers, unfortunately, end up doing some of the discipline, which is that collaborative problem solving. And this position really did free them up to work more closely with the students on their caseload. So I thought that was very telling that they were willing to also support the request for him as well. All right, so if I'm moving on to my pages are all messed up. So the full-time equivalent change for staff request would be a 3.7 increase in staffing. And that's a total salary change of approximately $295,426. And then going down to the supplies and services budget requests, most of those requests, again, same idea of the cost of items and materials having increased. And then also, if we look at the instructional materials line item, and again, I'm so upset that I don't have page numbers, but the instructional materials, many of those are now included because prior to this, they were included in ESSA funds. And so therefore, just like the other schools, those increases are there because now schools are needing to take them on themselves. The only one that looks a little bit different is the math and focus. And our actual cost for this year was much closer to, I think closer to $9,000 or $10,000 as opposed to what we had budgeted last year. So that number for math and focus consumables, I have increased that to 8 to make sure that we have included that for those consumables. The iReady subscriptions have increased as well. One of the things we did this year was we really put forth a big push with iReady at all grade levels. And we're using it in the classrooms, and teachers are working with students on one of the areas of iReady, which is My Path, which is very specific to what the student needs. And so teachers are using that with their students, and they have incorporated that into not extra curriculum time, but time during the day or at home when students can do that. And I am very much looking forward. We have our mid-year benchmark assessments coming up at the end of January. And a lot of teachers are saying they're looking forward to that data, as I am as well. I really want to see if using the iReady in a different way this year has helped to make any increases in progress. So that's coming up at the end of the month. So the total increase in the line item budgets is 24,892, and you have that on your pages. And the only other thing for capital improvements, I will say that when people come into the building, they're always amazed at the age of the building and how well kept up it is. And so I think we owe a lot to our custodial staff. We owe a lot to our teachers and students for taking good care of what we have here. Of course, that doesn't mean that we don't need things. We are on, we're hoping to stay on a track where we can remove carpets and have tile installed. And that would be this summer. We're trying to have that done for 3 additional rooms. We have had issues with mold. We had one recently just to have it checked out, but there are rooms that potentially have mold in them. So we're trying to mitigate that by every summer, getting rid of the mold, getting rid of the carpet and replacing the tile. Ceiling tile replacement, floor tile repairs, all of those are regular maintenance that really need to be done. I have a playground in my capital improvement. I don't see that that's going to happen right away, but I want to put it in there because Salisbury could really, really use a playground. Anybody that has seen, I guess it's a playground, but it isn't when you look at other schools' playgrounds. And we really do need an improvement in that area. So those would be the main ideas of what we need for capital improvement. And I think that's it. Everything else in terms of increases was based on the increasing cost of materials and resources at this point. There's nothing significant that changed there. Again, thank you. And I'm sorry to say it again about the pages. I apologize.
Does anybody have any questions for Mrs. Daw? Paul Mayette.
And this question may wind up being for Brian or Kyle. I'm not sure. So I'm looking at the data implementation specialist position. And first of all, I really like this idea. When we looked at everything that we were talking about with scores earlier this year, I think this directly addresses that and taking some of that burden of looking through data off of the teachers and putting it into specialists is great. My question is this. Looking at the description, this seems an almost borderline administrative position. And certainly the person who can come in and be an expert in data and be capable of leading a team and modeling lessons and all of that. I know we tend to budget at Master's 6. That's going to be a very special person coming in on their 6th year, capable of doing that. Is it prudent to somehow budget that at a higher position with the expectation that the best person we're going to find is likely going to be earning more than that?
I guess if I'm going to respond first, I thank you and I appreciate your input on that because you know, you're probably right. It might be difficult to find someone that's going to meet all those qualifications and do exactly what we want them to do. And so I can appreciate what you're saying. I didn't, nor do I anticipate it as being a district level position, but I can see where you're coming from in terms of what that looks like. I think I'd like to start it and begin it where they are looking at data with the teachers and working with teachers in the classrooms. And maybe my projection of my idea of what it would be over time is bigger than what initially I would be advertising it for. Because I don't want to scare anybody away, but I want someone that really has the qualifications to do those kinds of things and to make an impactful difference in the classroom. So I do hear what you're saying, and thank you for asking that question. But that's where I'm coming from with it.
Yeah, and if I can confirm, that would not be an administrative position, to your point, Paul. So that wouldn't be dissimilar to another interventionist or specialist, where the role is separate and other, right? Not necessarily classroom or intervention, but that wasn't envisioned, nor would it necessarily automatically jump into an administrative role.
No, I'm just saying if I'm looking at the qualifications necessary, the person who could fulfill those would be somebody, to me, who would be on that verge of looking for an administrative type position.
Yep.
That's what I was viewing it that way.
Yeah, so we definitely could, as we go through in the process, if you know, depending on as we, you know, winnow down the request and that's as a proposal that moves forward, then that would certainly be something that we can adjust as we move through, for sure.
Narissa?
So first of all, thank you for everyone for presenting tonight and for the school councils and administrative staff and support staff and all the work that they did on these presentations. I just have a quick question, Catherine. It looks like on your instructional tech, you have listed a projector screen and a 3D printer. We accept donations on behalf of all the district schools as part of our school committee consent agenda. And it looks like back in August, we received those two items from SES PTA. Is this additional?
No, I'm glad you brought that up. No, it's been ongoing. So the screen, we're dying for that screen. And people are busy and I did some research on it and I shared it with the IT people. I need their expertise to make sure the one I'm getting is the one that's going to really be adequate to work with the other materials that we have in the other equipment. So I need to get back to them. So that really is not additional. So thank you very much for bringing that up. That money is still sitting there and I want to go forward with it because no, we have not gotten the screen. It's same thing with the 3D printer, because once we put that in, once we knew that we were going to get the part-time STEM teacher, Joe came, wonderful, and good for her. She didn't want to jump into buying a 3D printer until she knew exactly what it was going to look like for her being in all three schools. Was she really going to be able to utilize it as opposed to just spending the money? So we kept the money there and we're kind of waiting to see where she's going to go and where that money could best be used for her in the program. So, you're right. Those two items can definitely be taken out because they're already encumbered.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Pauline, did you not have a question anymore? I saw your hand up.
I did, but I'm all set. I found the answering materials.
Mrs. Daw, you said that you had mold on the rugs and stuff. Is that from water coming in or is it from stuff being spilt or whatever?
I think over time, I mean, it's new to me. It started happening last year, I think. And I mean, Kyle, I'm sure you can speak to it better, but I think it is like a culmination of water and moisture that's in the building.
That's correct. So outside of SES, there's what's called a vernal pool that the experts love to reference. And that added level of moisture makes its way into the classrooms from time to time. And surface mold can pop up. And so what our process is to, anytime that comes up, we have it tested. And so their test is to do a, and when I say they, this is a environmental consulting firm where they'll take a sample of the air inside the classroom and a sample of air outside the classroom to make sure that they're comparable and that there's no hazard there to the students. So we certainly take it very seriously. But to answer your question specifically, it is generally moisture that makes its way into the building from outside.
And I have another, it's not so much a question as a statement. I've been on the committee a long time, and every year, Mr. Montanari has come to the school committee and talked about the low income of Salisbury. And Mrs. Daw, you did the same as well today. I understand that you want to highlight those areas of Salisbury having difficulty, and they have to have certain supports. However, I don't want that to be always what's said as why Salisbury can't rise up to where it needs to be. So I'm just hoping in the future, as Brian and your team, that we can try and steer away from our budgets as saying Salisbury's this needy school all the time. There has to come a point where we as a committee, as a administration, brings this school up to a standard that isn't what we're seeing for Salisbury, is that you have this school of a lot of low incomes of families. You have a lot of great families here as well, that whether you're low income or above income, they care about their schools, they care about their kids. And I just don't think it needs to be reminded of a community for Salisbury that this is the first thing that's always said in this budget meeting. I don't mean anything by what I'm saying. It's just being on the committee as long as I have, I've heard it every single solitary year that I've been on this committee. And I just want us to move forward from that and think of Salisbury like the other two schools as well. So.
Can I respond?
Absolutely.
You know, I struggled a lot with how to begin with this, because I didn't want to go there. I don't want to go there. When I came here, you know, I was so excited and I was so with the belief, and I still am, you know, we're just dealing with kids.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter, you know, it doesn't matter where they come from, because what we have to do is we're dealing with and we're teaching the wonderful kids that are in front of us. And so, you know, I guess I'm glad you brought that up. That's not who I'm concentrating on. And it maybe it came out that way. And that's not what I believe. I believe that our job is to just make sure that whoever is in front of us, and whatever it takes, with whatever resources we have, it's our job to bring the kids and give them success and bring them to exactly where they need to be. And I firmly believe that. And I've been saying that since I came. I'm going to be honest with you that I don't know. It's a struggle sometimes here, because sometimes the notion is what you just said, and I'm fighting it. And so you just gave me a knock in a good way to say, you know, be careful, Catherine, don't go down that road, because I don't want to go down that road. And that's what I heard when I came here. And I didn't want us to be that. I want us to push ourselves above that, and to bring our kids with us. So I did struggle. About how to start. And, you know, you picked up on my my error in my beginning. So I hear you. That's not who I am here. It's not what I want the school to be. So I'm not going to apologize for it, but it was an error in, I guess, how it was presented. And I know I struggled with that. So you slapped me and I got it, but not in a bad way.
I appreciate you being open and honest, because that's what this is about. That's what this is about, is for us to be open and honest and try and move forward and help each other. And I appreciate everything that you and Jane are doing. I know it's a struggle over there. The culture has been there for a long time, but I truly believe that we can rise above this and bring Salisbury up to where it needs to be. Thank you very much. Paulise?
Yeah, I was just going to take kind of a different approach in commending Ms. Dara in her presentation tonight. Having sat through almost as many of these as you have, Linda. I felt that the former principal used to go on ad nauseum about the state of that issue in Salisbury, and I'm thankful that Catherine has minimized that to the extent that she has. I think she did a great job, and I think as we continue to move forward as a committee, that we continue just to shed that whole thing and treat all these schools the same. It's my pitch.
Sorry, it was muted. Narissa?
I just want to say, I mean, I feel like every time someone raises a point, if you don't kind of speak your own, that sometimes that voice is the one for the committee. And I think it's important that we hear what the individuals in the schools are seeing, regardless of what we want to hear. So I want to say, I want to hear that. I want to hear if Beth is dealing with a lot of students with anxiety, I want to be able to hear that. If Catherine is seeing that some of the effects of income level are having an effect of students in her school, and that we need to build in different supports in the budget based on what the individuals in the schools are seeing. I personally want to be able to hear that, because if I'm not hearing that because of, you know, kind of this, I understand the history. I don't want anyone to filter though, because I think we need the open and honest view.
Paul Goldner?
I'm gonna a little bit echo what Narissa said. My hand was up before she knew what she was gonna say, but we know home life is such a huge factor in how students do in schools, and the numbers that Catherine cited more than double the number of students in Salisbury are low income compared to Pine Grove and NES. And all that means is we have different obstacles and different challenges. And while the schools, we should be providing the same, you know, if science education is doing this in second grade, that should be uniform across the schools. But at the same time, the individual challenges that the individual students are having in the schools are impacted by what their home life is like. And that can be different across the communities, even as much as we're trying to raise all of the students to the same place by the time they graduate.
Don't get me wrong, I don't want us to filter anything. However, I don't want that to be, for lack of a better word, a crutch, to say that we can never get our numbers up because we have a 40% poverty level or low income level. I just don't want ever to think that because of these constraints that Salisbury has, that we can't educate our students. That's all I'm saying. I never want to filter it, but I want it to be, it's not holding Salisbury back because of that. Even kids at low income and struggling should still be able to learn. Caitlin?
I'm struggling with my response because I echo a lot of what Linda said, and I agree that we should not be filtered. On another side of this, I always have, and I've spoke to this earlier today in a different meeting, believing that children are able, no matter what their home life is like, and providing boundaries and respect and pushing and that scaffolding to push students forward. That's a culture issue. So when students come in to Salisbury Elementary, I just would like to see, hearing your first statements, they're not wrong, Ms. Dodd, they're not. They're a truth, and they're a truth that Salisbury's had for a very long time. But sometimes when people hear that truth and they're not in these big, long meetings, they interpret that as not children or our students not being able. And I would just like the message to be that our students are able. They're able. And yes, they have a lot to overcome, but when they enter into Triton schools, they are just as able as every other student, no matter what part of the district they're coming from. And that's the message that I would like more people to hear. And that's where I'm struggling right now, because I can't disagree with you. Those are facts. Those are numbers, and they hurt to hear, and they shouldn't be filtered. I just wish that it was not always led in that way. And that's not your fault. That's just kind of my feeling. I just believe our students are just as able as every other student. Socially, emotionally, educationally, I believe that they are just as able. And I would like to hear that come forward more at the beginning of the statements when we do this than the, well, we have all these challenges because. So that's where I'm struggling, but that's nobody's fault. That's just my personal take on Salisbury and Salisbury Elementary in our town. Our students are able. And the more they hear it, I think the better for everyone it is.
Can I just say, Linda, just one context piece is that the nature of this meeting is budget proposals. So just to that point, depending on the audience, the delivery, the purpose of the communication, I didn't hear anything that Catherine said that said we should hold back and not provide the supports because our Salisbury kids are less capable. Her goal in here tonight is to present a budget to you to say, here's what I need, and here are the reasons for that. So just by way of context, I think it's we have to take the delivery with the purpose of the meeting and the presentation this evening.
Point taken. Does anybody have any other questions?
Just one more, can I end? I really, I so love it here. And I don't know if you remember me last year when I first started and how excited I was. And I believe that about every single kid. I don't care where they come from. And I really do. So I just want everybody to know that I am here because every single one of our kids deserves to learn, and every single one of our kids can learn. And I will do everything I can working with the teachers to make sure that that is available for them and that they have every opportunity that's there. Because I know we can do it, and I know they can do it. And what they need from us is the encouragement, and they need from us the belief that they can do it. And sometimes that belief is what pushes you over the edge and brings you exactly where you need to be. So I never want anyone to think that that's what I live, that Salisbury, it can't do things. And because I don't live that way. And I want to end with that. That's all.
No, I absolutely appreciate you being open and honest, Catherine. And that's just what I was trying to say too. Like Brian said, we have to take this for what it is. But again, you're going to have many people who will go back and view this. And it's great that you re-clarified that for them, to let them know that you absolutely are there to give them every opportunity to succeed. And I believe you and Jane are doing what you can to make sure that that happens, and I appreciate it. If there's no other questions, Brian, do you have anything else that you would like to say?
I have no more words. Thank you to Beth, Nicole, and Catherine for their presentations this evening, and same time, same place tomorrow night. I mean,
That's it.
tomorrow night, not tonight.
Tomorrow night at 6 p.m. we will be here again. Can I have a motion to adjourn?
Make a motion to adjourn.
A second.
Any discussion? We will have a roll call vote. Susanna,
Yep.
Erin,
Yes.
Paul Lees,
Yes.
Paul Mayette,
Yes.
Paul Goldner,
Yes.
Narissa,
Yes.
Caitlin,
Yes.
and I'm a yes as well. Thank you all and have a good night.
Take care, everyone. Have a great night.